with Star Trek's Patterns of Force. We get another episode that warns people of the Federation and the Starfleet of what happens when you violate the Prime Directive. Yeah. Well, Kirk didn't see this one coming, so there was this professor of his from his days in the Academy who went on this mission to observe this planet that hadn't quite developed into their level of technology. There's no, they haven't developed warp technology. So he goes there, he's supposed to observe, and then kind of disappeared, and they hadn't heard from him a while. So the Enterprise is going to go check up and see what happened, if he died or whatnot, you know. Well, it turns out he decided to interfere with this planet. See, they were a bit of a warlike people, and were so divided, and were fighting amongst themselves, and it was like, he's like, oh man, if they would just get together and unify, they could develop. But at the rate they were going, oh man, they probably weren't going to progress much further and all this. Of course, the rule is don't interfere. If that's the way they are, it's none of your business. You write your report, gee, you're sad about the circumstances, and then you leave. Meanwhile, it turns out they have a neighboring planet within the same system. So there's it was Ecos or Ecos they called it, and then they were calling them Iotians. I don't know, but the other planet was called Zion. Oh boy, that sounds familiar. And they were a little bit more developed than the other guys, and they were immigrating to this planet. They thought they would introduce them to new technologies and trade and all this sort of stuff. So this professor, and his name was John Gill, decided that a unifying force would be something like political movements of the 20th century. And he decided to use one that started out with a charismatic leader, and decided to go with, the Nazis. Just, now, keep in mind that John Gill's a guy that World War II was something that happened 300 years ago or so, you know, so there's been some distance. And he's a historian too. Yeah. So this brings up the interesting case that continues to this day, though people won't admit it, where he thought that there was some amount of efficiency through the fascism of which Nazism presented, where you have the strong man leader. It unifies the public into a common goal amongst themselves, and it pulled Germany, although very briefly, out of their doldrums. They were in a depression, which was a global depression, but nevertheless they were in one. They were in horrible debt and whatnot due to the First World War, and so on and so forth. And they were pretty much down in the dumps, and this guy re-energizes them and brings them back. So at the time, a lot of intellectuals and so-called progressives yeah, that's how old the movement is, praised him, thought he was the great thing. A lot of those intellectuals at the time thought he was a great guy, and some of them even went further when it became obvious what he was about. And they, well, I wasn't wrong. That's how some of these guys are. So that's what impressed them, that he restored, seemingly, Germany's economy and all that, and was his driving force and all that. So that's the premise of which John Gill presents here. The problem in the lesson they present is that amount of power in the hands of one man, will become corrupt. And no matter how benign he may have been, in the case of John Gill, he was, but he had a lieutenant in this organization that he developed, and he wanted the power, and so he just dopes up John Gill, and he's just a puppet, where the real power was this character named Melicon, who kind of looked like Joe Piscopo. So he was the real power of this, and he hated foreigners and all this stuff and decided to go with it. Now, did that just happen naturally, that he decided he didn't like these alien Zion scum coming to his planet? Or was this something John Gill used because the Nazis came to power, and that everything was to blame Jews for everything, and whatever was problematic or they couldn't quite explain it, well, Jews, huh? So that's, so did he introduce that? In that respect, you can't just chalk it up to, he got caught by this guy and the guy doped him up and took over and used him, and oh boy, the poor bastard, it wasn't his fault. No, it is his fault in a lot of ways. He introduced this, and it's like Kirk's telling him, you knew what the Nazis were. That's what Kirk calls them. So there's not a whole lot of redemption here. Obviously he wasn't in complete control of all of this, and he thought, hey, we'll just leave all the genocide out of it and everything else will work. Well, the power, of course, is the ultimate enemy of people. If you're not limiting it and restraining it and weighting it down, then you're going to open a whole kind of can of worms, which we struggle with to this day and will continue to do so for centuries after we're gone. It's just the nature of humanity. And so John Gill was an idiot and really screwed up, and apparently was a teacher that Kirk liked, but now he's probably got to reassess that. So that was the premise of it. Of course, this is another episode where, hey, make use of ready-made costumes and sets, and they do that again here, where this planet, they all look human, so they just had a similar development of Earth, although this must have been recent, and they don't quite explain it because they fire a nuclear warhead at the Enterprise at the opening here. And they're all stunned. It's like, well, how could they have this technology? Now, did they steal it from the people of Zion, or did John Gill give them the ability for that? I mean, listen, buddy, what the hell? Nazis with nukes? Come on. So, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, he died in the end. So, because, I mean, he would have had to have gone on trial, I would think, back at Starfleet and all that. But anyway, so yeah, it was another one of those with repurposed stuff, and it makes use of it for a sci-fi show, and you just explain it away as like, well, there's parallels of humans. And later on, Next Generation, I think, does a show that kind of explains very well why there's so many humanoid peoples in the universe of Star Trek. So there's that. There's some of the elements. It seemed similar when Kirk and Spock, they put on the street clothes to try to blend in. It was similar to the City on the Edge of Forever, where they had to find clothes and stuff. Now that was a situation where they were forced into it, so that's why Spock's there. Here, yeah, Spock should have stayed on the ship, and maybe Bones went with Kirk on this one, because Spock is just, even with his ears covered, the guy looks alien. And these racist guys, hey, let's see that take that hat off, oh my God, look at those. So, and just for the purposes of blending in, and you don't want these people to know about aliens. Of course, they have to tell them the whole thing. So it's kind of, yeah, they dropped the ball on that one, but John Gill had already screwed it up. So this could have been an interesting follow-up thing, and the relationship between the two worlds there, and what their development will be going forward. Not that I want them to revisit it now under the current crop of people running Star Trek, because they would mess it all up. But yeah, that's so. Spock why? Just because he's Kirk's buddy and all of that, but it's just too much of a risky thing. And I mean, Kirk seemed to think he could just get in and out, but that wasn't going to happen. So there they were, and this whole Nazi repeat. It's not one of the best Star Trek shows, but it's not, I don't think you can say it is the worst. It does introduce the premise and that business on the philosophies of power, that people just want to force things through. You want to have all the power. I'm the one that can get it right and all that stuff. And once you get a taste of it, it's like a cute little kitten that gets the taste of blood, and now they're a carnivorous monster. So it's a cautionary tale, if you will. So there you go, a show that makes use of costumes and props they already have, and they figure out a way to do it And the only problem with that is Star Trek got a little repetitive with that. But it's what they had. So it's either that or nothing. And eventually they ended up with nothing. But still, I'm glad they did it anyway, because wouldn't have that much Star Trek if they didn't. All right, there you go. Star Trek Patterns of Force.
All right. Thank you for watching and listening. Slay. Why not like and subscribe and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores and have plenty of goodies for you. You know, hats, mugs, stickers, posters, all that goody stuff. Plus, you can head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book Night Night. Oh, yeah. Plus, you can also catch my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, over at RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on my channel at BitChute. That's the Mr Nailsin channel on BitChute.com.